Hello, hello. I am upstairs in my studio and I got my paint out. I put it into yogurt jars and I mix up my own colors and holding the computer in one hand. I think I'm gonna buy myself one of those GoPro cameras, the ones that you can put onto your forehead, and then I can make really marvelous painting demonstration videos. Oh, fluid, and I don't want to pour this on my keyboard. So here's one of my artworks that is not finished. That's Kenny, and I still have to work on that one. And I'm working also on this cabinet here. It's a very cheap Rubbermaid type of cabinet. You can buy those for like, I think like $60 or $70. I forgot what we paid. So, but I'm going to paint this entire thing here, the entire cabinet from all sides. I don't like black surfaces. I don't like, it's kind of depressing. It's like it's always kind of dark, you know. Some people like it. I prefer everything in bright colors except the walls. The walls are, I like the walls in, I like this very light pastel peach that we have. I love the way the people before us painted and decorated this house. And I have my artwork up now in the staircase, and it really brings in light and color and excitement and joy. And I paint on recycled cardboard boxes, like this cardboard box, the office chair was in it, and I'm storing stuff in it. I'm storing packaging paper in it, which I reuse for sending presents to my family. And so I like reusing and recycling because it's good for planet Earth. Why cause waste, you know? If you recycle and reuse, you can also save a lot of money in the course of it, which is excellent. So I have one friend on the California side who is very, very resourceful with all these things, and I learn a lot from her too. It's really good. So what I do is I have to go over these layers here several times. This is just the beginning now that I'm in beginning stage with this figure here, the blue god in person form. And I don't even know if I keep these colors. I probably will, because I love this zinc green. It's always been one of my absolute favorite, probably the most favorite color in my whole life. And I remember when I was a child, we were visiting the artist Chimiotti in Germany. I forgot where. I think it was somewhere. I think it was in Bonn. And they had these self-made, his children, they're all artistic, and they made those puppets themselves out of paper mache, and I think I was like 7 or 8, and I was just so fascinated with those puppets that they made themselves. That just was so thrilling to me and so exciting that I had to, when we got home, I had to get paper mache and I had to start making those types of puppets that they made, and I wanted to take that ghost that they had home, but they wouldn't let me take the ghost home. I remember they loved their puppets. They wouldn't let them go, and I just wanted that ghost so much. And that ghost was very much in a color like this, in a similar pastel green, zinc green, or like copper oxide green. You know, that's the green usually that happens when copper oxidizes. That's when we see copper domes that are old. They usually all have this type of color, because the entire copper dome has oxidized and created the zinc green. Very beautiful. I guess zinc, the metal zinc, probably creates a similar color as well. It's pretty neat. So I'm in my creative mode right now, and I can only use one hand, but that's okay, because I want to demonstrate a little bit how I paint, and how a painting looks very lush in the end when you apply several layers. And well, the thinner the paint is, I usually buy acrylic paint at the hardware store, and they are usually quite thin, so it requires several applications, probably at least 5, and it depends also on the color. This particular color I'm using here is actually a mix that my husband had accidentally bought some oil-based paint, and he wasn't using it, and then I took it and I mixed it in with other paints, and it smells kind of nice. But in general, I don't buy oil-based paint. It's not environmentally safe, so it is much better to use acrylic for outdoors as well, so that works best. Whatever is best for the environment is best for all. And there were a couple things that I'd just been thinking about before I started painting that I wanted to talk to you about before I get into the other subjects. I took some notes, and I was watching some films about Heidegger, and I did some more research on him, and that's quite an interesting figure. It's a little bit on the mentally ill side, though. But everybody who was in that Nazi party was, in my opinion, mentally ill. And then we have to ask, what is mental illness? You know, so a lot of people are not quite completely conform about the definition of mental illness. You know, somebody might be a fundamentalist Christian, and if I talk against that, they will call me mentally ill, and they'll call me everything that they are themselves, every single thing, actually. It's always this very interesting double standard that I see in people, but it has to do with the ego. Ego does that. I had some very interesting exchanges last night again with the fundamentalists, and it's also my fault, you know, if I see a fundamentalist with some doomsday stuff, then you always know it's a fundamentalist if you see doomsday information. And but sometimes I'm bored, and I feel like I want to respond, and I feel like I want to educate, but these people are like so not on that level of listening. They are so in their crazy, insane, almost like psychotic I would say, you know, where they're totally not able to listen at all. They just, whatever I say, they will only hear it in a specific context that is screened through their ego, basically, and through the religion that the ego latched onto. Very interesting. I got my notes in the computer, but I just want to do this for a little bit, and I'll edit some out if it gets too long. I haven't been painting for a long time. I needed to do this again. I did some sewing here on my table, and I still have some more sewing to do. I don't throw things away, I patch them. Like old pillowcases, for example. They are already made like a patchwork. That's the style. And so when it falls apart, I put some more patches on it, and it's fun to do that. I like doing this, and I like these particular pillowcases that where you stuff things into it and you see that material is breaking apart, and I'm going to sew something creative on top. But I can't even get to I have like a real big walk-in closet with all kinds of cloth materials and rests and fabric rests, because I make a lot of clothes myself, particularly for the heavy winter months, because my husband doesn't like the house warm. He likes it around 60 degrees, and that has caused me a lot of bladder infections. And out of this urgent situation grew a virtue, as they always say in German. The urgency makes somebody creative, and so I sewed myself real thick clothes out of baby blankets, and I sewed them double layered. I get cold feet a lot, and there's this old saying, when you're afraid you get cold feet and hands, you know, because the brain, when it gets into fight or flight syndrome, it will use the energy for the internal organs, and it will withdraw from the outside periphery. And that's why the hands and nose, particular noses that are long Pinocchio noses, they get cold first before any other noses. My mother has a real big long Pinocchio nose, and she doesn't like it, but I think it looks really interesting. Really interesting. My mother was a beautiful woman, still is. It's old now, over 80. Still a beautiful woman. When she was young, she was very stunning looking, and she never really accepted herself. I think that's sad. Very sad. My mother was way more beautiful than I am. I always considered myself as the ugly duckling in the family. My father is also good looking. All the women like my dad, and my brother was a photo model. And so they all were admired for their looks, and I was not. And that's okay, you know. My face is kind of crooked, you know. My nose is crooked and all of this. But I still like myself, and I think we all should like ourselves. That's a good thing, if we like ourselves, just the way we are. I mean, I wouldn't mind doing gene therapy and becoming like Babette, the 3D model, the animation that looks very real. That's every woman probably wants to look like that. But for now, I like it. I like the way I look. I'm not unhappy, even if other people are very unhappy. I like it, you know. I think it's cute, you know, and that's kind of like a taboo. You're not supposed to like yourself, this society. But I do, and I see nothing wrong with it. So, and I have to also do a little bit affirmation sometimes, because I'm not like showered with compliments. Matter of fact, I'm showered with criticism on a daily basis. So it is very difficult for me to live with this, and with this constant criticism that I get from people around me. And the animals, they don't criticize me. The animals, they accept me the way I am. They think that's all cool what I'm doing. So that's nice. And sometimes I thought, oh, it would be nice to be living somewhere far away from civilization and just hang out with the animals, you know, and adopt a bunch of animals, feed the bears and the raccoons and the deer, and make friends with all of them and live with them far away from everyone. You know, like that guy that goes out with his stuffed teddy bear, that goes out into nature with his bicycle. He has this amazing song that was written, I think, for him. And that song made me cry, because he was singing, I will go out there far into the wild where nobody can hurt me and nobody can see me and nobody can find me. And I think that is so incredibly touching, and it is so true, you know. I'm not afraid of wild animals. They don't hurt you. So animals are very good. They're very much in tune with everything. They know what's good and what's not good. They know who is aggressive and egoic, and they know who is peaceful and who is just there to feed him. For example, in Mount Shasta, there's a German lady living there, and she's an artist too. And Mali's same name as my mother, and also about my mother's age, and she has deer come into her house in Mount Shasta because the deer know that the people there don't hurt them. So, and here where we live here, the people do hurt them real bad. And there's mothers with babies. They come into our garden frequently, and oops, I dropped paint on the floor. And they feel a little safer in our garden. So I never see the males, because the males are always hunted down by Republicans. Very sad. I personally am not a liberal, but I could never be part of the Republican Party, that's for sure. That would never work. That is so incredibly archaic, the platform of the Republican Party. How can anyone who's educated be part of that party, you know? But the Democratic Party is not very much in tune either. They cater a lot to corporate interest as well. And so does the Green Party, and so does every single political party. And that's very sad to see that. And there are some parties that are margin parties that They have something to offer on the right and on the left, but then they have other things that completely cross the entire picture with a red cross. So that's unfortunate. And so there's no party that I can possibly support. But one thing is for sure, there are some amazing people, and it doesn't matter what party they belong to. Like Hillary Clinton, John McCain I liked. They slandered him into the ground. They really did, because he wanted to do some reforming of the medical system to make people actually more independent. And boy, that didn't sit well with the money-making system. They don't want people to be independent. They want people to be exploited to the fullest extent. It either works or it doesn't work. And when something doesn't work, it should not be repeated. Like Adolf Hitler, for example. And that philosopher Martin Heidegger, he didn't think much about it. He was quite in denial about the consequences of this national socialism. It's kind of like a contradiction in itself, that word. So national always implies segregation and separation and hierarchy and oppression. So socialism is the opposite of that. It is to bring equality into the picture. And Friedrich Nietzsche knew that. I know that Friedrich Nietzsche would not be in favor of Heidegger. I know that for sure. You would probably praise him on a few things that he said. But the overall understanding of Heidegger was not very good. Very, very, very ivory tower detached from actuality, from what is really going on. While Friedrich Nietzsche was more the psychologist, and much more so even than Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was very, very much dabbling in the individuals, the individuals. That's also where the psychoanalytic approach comes from. It's always the individuals that are being treated like there's some kind of crazy aberration, you know. But we need to look at the big picture, and that's what Friedrich Nietzsche did. And we need to look at the entire thing from above, and then we see that the individual is just a product of the overall society, of the overall environment. What's actually happening around that person, those persons. So it's very much intertwined, the way these things are unfolding, you know, with society, and how much. And actually there's like there are correlations over correlations going on that makes things so complicated. And so the individual is so dependent, like a seaweed in an ocean, is so dependent on the fluctuations of the overall society. Market psychologists, of course, studied that. They are very well aware of that. I should have studied market psychology, because that's that also encompasses sociology and the dynamics of societies, group dynamics. And a lot of people, they don't seem to understand that at all, not even in the slightest, not even in the absolute basics, because I try to help a group, local group, bring better animal rights laws, but they could not agree on anything. We had to leave. It was terrible. And when I said the first thing that we should have is a paper voting system where people write on a little snip of paper, it's put into a hat or something, and then one person just does a drawing, okay, and writes down with these anonymous votes what is being voted on. And they just couldn't understand what I'm talking about, that people are not honest about their vote when they just vote with their hand, like hand up, how many are for this, how many are for this. And then a lot of people will not vote honestly because they're too afraid of what their idol person or the girlfriend they're trying to get in that group, that's why they were there in the first place and not for any other reason, what she will think of him, and so he can't vote just like the way he really thinks. And a lot of people don't even know anymore what they really want, and they're so driven by their religion and by wanting to fit in and all of this. But if we had anonymous voting where the name is not attached to the vote, then it would be much easier to do, because then they would be more inclined, let's put it that way, they would be more inclined to be honest. And these people could not understand this in that group. They could not understand what I'm talking about. And I find that very sad. I think we need in school, we need to have mandatory subjects that are based on psychology and based on sociology and all of this. I don't see much of that in schools. I don't see it that much. I don't see it in the way it was when I was in school. But it's gotten a lot better in Germany now. So Germany is making big progress with education. But I don't see it happening in this country. I don't see very good curricula being taught. So it's all about baseball and those kind of religion, creationism, the Lord Jesus Christ. That's not exactly competitive on the world marketplace. Hello, and so they shouldn't be surprised if Mercedes-Benz withdraws and says, "Hey, all of you engineers, let's pack up and go back home, because obviously this wasn't working out too well." And the reason why is, and they said it publicly, the reason why was because of cultural differences. And so what are the cultural differences? It's pretty obvious what the cultural differences are. It's religion. And in Europe we don't have that. Religion is not at the forefront of the conversation. Matter of fact, is when I grew up, religion was actually never even the subject for any reason, not even talking about it. It just was not a subject. There were many other important subjects, but that was definitely not one of them. And then through my friend Annalise, I was introduced to a Christian one time, and Christian minister. But that Christian minister, he was also a logotherapist. So I went to him saw him as a therapist, and he had he just sitting there, kind of like crunched up in his chair, kind of almost like intimidated he looked. And I was wondering why. What is this? Why is he so intimidated by everything? And then he quoted the Bible, and this made no sense. I was wondering, what is this? Why do people do this? What is he getting out of that, there's nothing he's getting out of it for his life. It's just some kind of, it's just for the ego, I guess, you know. So it's like the ego feels somehow comforted with this, or it's like some kind of protection layer or something against other people. I don't know. So, but there was nothing logical. Logotherapy. Oh, I just realized that name. My gosh, the irony of it. It's amazing. Logotherapy by Viktor Frankl, who was a great guy. You know, it's just logo and that religion doesn't kind of match up. So Annalise and I, we ended up just talking about primal therapy all the time. That was in the late 80s and like 89, 88. And we just ended up, I'm making a video, we ended up just talking about primal therapy, and he didn't say anything. He was not the type like here in this country. He nodded. He seemed to not disagree. He seemed to accept what we were saying. So Annalise said to him, "I know what it is. It's my birth." So that's my former therapist when I was a child. And she had already met Arjanov, and she had been in the center, and she had trained to become a primal therapist there for many years. And she said, "I'm going back to LA. I'm going back to Arjanov," when she was in her 70s. And now she's in her 90s, and she's still doing really well. So that was quite a trip. And and then when I came to his therapy session, that logotherapist, I only talked about primal therapy too. So it was like two lost causes for him. Oh, they're just talking only about primal therapy. They are not into logotherapy. No, it wasn't that logo for me. And so I told him told him all about it, about the books that I have read by Arjanov, and I told all people about it. I was so excited. And it helped me a great deal, primal therapy. Really, it was a major step in my life to make. Without that, I would not have made progress like that. You know, I was a real basket case. And although I never lost touch with reality, but I was in such a bad state. I had no other choice. And I just went from one therapy to another, and they just didn't help. All these talk therapies, they didn't help. There was also I didn't feel the therapist's compassion or anything. When the therapist is like thinking about what she's going to make for dinner, instead of listening to the patient and being like interested in her or his life, then it really has no sense. It's just a waste of time and money, you know. So and that's what it usually was. And that's why I saw that very clearly. And if I had been like my psychotic boyfriend at that time, I would not have seen it. I would have just lost my mind over all of this. But I saw it. I saw the causalities, and it was a bummer, but I saw it, and I didn't want to come to the United States. I kind of like was turned against it, because I went to a communist type of school and communist type of high school, very socialist oriented and pro-communism, and which I am too. I'm pro-communism, but it doesn't. Again, no system works if we have corrupt people. And we've seen this now. It doesn't matter what system we have. Capitalism, communism, socialism. Doesn't work. But the only thing that works, that, as Dr. Ray Kurzweil said, the quote by Benjamin Franklin, you know, democracy is the worst of all situations except for all the other ones. So that means democracy is still the best one. And you know, when we're dealing with corruption, that's the one we have to take. And dictatorship, and Martin Heidegger, he interpreted these romantic things into National Socialism that were just not realistic. And he didn't foresee what people will do. You know, if you give people a license to kill and execute, many of them will go overboard with it. They will love it. They will enjoy it. And so, if we have dictatorship in any form, it will not work. Even if it's even if it was very, very well intended. You know? Even if I was the dictator and I would make hunting illegal and all of this, then what do we have then? Then we have oppression again. Then we silence people. Then we are doing exactly the same old thing that has already happened over and over and over again. And that just will not work. No. It just will not work. A human, and that's what Jonathan Mises said, artist Jonathan Mises, he said, art is the only thing that can be the dictator. And that's why I'm painting here. My art is the dictator. Because my art does not execute anyone. You know? It only dictates itself into my motivation. And then it's there. And it's free of terror. It only exudes love and excitement and the joy of play, of color and form. And that's the only thing that works. Nothing else works. A human dictator would not work. That would also be very stressful on me if I was a dictator. I would get white hair like Bill Clinton. Because Bill Clinton really cared. He wanted, and he wasn't a dictator. He was just president, and he was really doing something. He was really, really, really making a huge, huge, gigantic contribution to society with everything he did. But it was, of course, it was slandered. Everything was slandered that he did. Because the corporations are running the media. They pay people to broadcast whatever they want to have broadcasted, slander of any sort. You know? There's just a buffet out there for them. And like Rockefeller said, every man has his price. You know? I wouldn't say every man or woman, but almost every person has his price. That's for sure. And that's what we need to heal. You know, we need to heal where the problems really are. You know, the core of the problems is the lack of concern, the lack of commitment, and so the also has to do a lot with the school system. You know, school system just doesn't teach the real values, as Rudolf Steiner taught. You know, the real values of creativity and love and caring and being stewards to our environment, to this planet Earth. And I just don't see it, you know, and that's what we need. That's what needs to be developed. That's what needs to be cultivated in people's heads. And I tend to get really angry and frustrated, and then I throw them away, and I think, oh, they're just hopeless or whatever, and then I feel like, I wish I was a dictator, and then I get very frustrated over this and sad, and it's not in accordance with my own biology, that anger and all of this. And I took my angry videos off because I get very sad when I see them, when I see myself in a state of frustration and anger, and where I just have pure hatred. It's not a good state to be in, because it's not a productive state to be in. It doesn't bring us forward in any way. Anybody who is angry, anyone who is seeking conflict and aggressive conversations and all of this, not bringing us forward in any way. The only thing that brings us forward, and I've seen it now so many times in my own life, it revealed itself over and over to me, this truth, in any kind of form. Animals taught me this, when I have a negative thought about somebody, my dog immediately does this sighing sound. He is so acutely tuned into my emotions. He can basically, I don't know how he does it, maybe he smells a difference in pheromones. He just feels it, the vibration or the something, the subatomic particles that I emit or something. So he feels it, and that's what's psychic. And he immediately stops me and says, "You're on the wrong track. Okay, this thought is on the wrong track." Gosh, I mean, once we get to that point, once we have a dog like that who can be our Buddha, then that is the best teacher we can have, who immediately stops us in our thought processes even. That's what the AI researchers dream about, to have basically a machine that would alert us, kind of like a machine that alerts you if your blood sugar is going too high or something. It works in the same principle. My dog is my teacher, and he tells me, he breathes like this, like, gosh, again, she's thinking something negative. Every time. And my husband doesn't believe it, but I see it. I see it happen because he's on the couch when I'm on the computer. And it doesn't happen when I'm just sad, when I'm sad or suffering or in grief over the animals. Then it doesn't happen. It happens as soon as I have a real aggressive, violent, egoic type of reaction, thought to somebody, however justified. It's not the right path. See, and I learn this every single day on my path. Every single day. And it is real hardcore, and it's a real grinding, difficult process. And I, again and again and again, I go like, I did it again. Oh my gosh. I was having an egoic reaction again, just in my thought, and that's when we make progress. When that happens, we make progress. We make progress automatically. It progresses automatically. So, and that's what we need to do. And people think like meditation and mindfulness and work on themselves is easy or something. It is not easy. It's not easy at all. It is hard, grinding work. But that's the only way, unfortunately. We all want to cut corners. We all do. Our bodies speak much louder than our rationality in so many ways. But that's the path. The path is become aware and alert. And I know that Heidegger, although he had a bunch of really good ideas and thoughts and understandings already about how the universe works and the law of attraction and the interaction and so on. But he didn't see the real broad picture of things. He didn't see where the other people were. Kind of like Al Gore, also, you know, very much in his ivory tower and very advanced. But then he didn't see the big picture. He didn't see it where other people were. They were not on that ivory tower level. So when he campaigned, he didn't have anyone to help him, you know. George W. Bush, he had the corporations and the market psychologists to tell him exactly how he had to behave. They even drugged him up so that he would be not nervous in the conversation with Al Gore. Quite a conversation partner for him. You know, George W. Bush, he had to like memorize all of this, and he was nervous. It was real hard for him. So, and Al Gore was just totally on his own with this. He had to do all this from scratch by himself. And he did a brilliant job. But I could see he got frustrated a few times because he felt like what's going on is people are not following what I'm saying, and he didn't realize what this whole thing was all about. He didn't realize how corporate this whole thing was set up against him. And so people weren't interested in his logistics. They were interested in who they can identify themselves with, because people don't vote because of logistics and what's necessary. They vote because they want a daddy they can identify themselves with, a daddy who resembles their own daddy, basically, you know. Country and barbecue, cowboy hat, that kind of stuff. It's not about like world hunger, global warming. That's denied too. It's denied by the corporations, and they run the religion vehicle, and then people believe that whole thing, the entire brainwash program. They fall right into it, and they make that their Christian agenda, because they're so manipulated and run by the corporations. And if they just realized how much they are manipulated for corporate interest, I think they would become very, very angry. Very, very angry at this. They would feel really, really cheated. But they don't want to realize that. Instead, they want to go against those who are trying to help them, like Al Gore and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton. They go against those because that's what's being dictated to them through movies like Law and Order, or all these shows that are so incredibly capitalist, corporate oriented. GoPro. Because that's easy, I can put that on my head and then I can do any of these things. Also, maybe we'll do some travel videos in the future, because we're planning on getting the Mercedes Sprinter van and do some traveling. And then I will get the GoPro camera and we'll record our activities and our hikes and into deep nature. And Kenny, and meeting people, maybe even interviewing people, maybe even petitioning for the whales and showing the interaction between the people and me petitioning. So something like this. So yeah, but again, Heidegger, it's not black and white, of course, the situation with him. That was a man who was desperately struggling for truth and for understanding, but he was also a scared person, a chicken, But I'm not saying this in a negative way. It's most people are chickens, and it has to do with the advancement of the individual. So, yeah, soul always sounds so sold out, but yeah, the essence of the person, was young. Heidegger has a young essence in him. Nietzsche has a very old essence in him. Nietzsche has gone through so many instances into the millennia, into the past. And now people will think this is totally lunatic. But then again, other people will talk about other things like Jesus walked on water. Well, is that less lunatic? That's my question. Or an atheist will say there's a stop to infinity. That's how lunatic is that? That's also pretty lunatic, because it's illogical. There cannot be a stop to infinity. And that's why I think that the energy that just keeps shifting is definitely shifting from one form into another, and also from one individual, consciously intelligent individual, to another. And who knows how many extraterrestrial high intelligences are out there. Low and high intelligences, and everything in between. And all kinds of shapes, forms, and existences. Now, an octopus, for example, that's a completely different existence as ours. Yet they're highly intelligent. They can reason. They can watch things, like somebody opening a jar. They go right after it and open that jar. They climb out of aquariums onto the laboratory desks, all the way over to another aquarium where there's a female octopus, for example, and they climb into that aquarium, and then they're together in that aquarium. I mean, it's just amazing that the people totally underestimated those invertebrates. Our common ancestor was a very small nematode in the ocean that was wiggling. So, from there, it went into the human lineage in one direction, and it went into the octopus lineage in the other direction. So, yeah, that's how ancient and how wide apart we are from the octopus with our DNA. But the octopus lineage has evolved parallel to the human evolving. Parallel. And it evolved just as much. And it's come out with an incredibly large head. And these gigantic tentacles that they can actually use as hands. And they can open jars with that. They can do all kinds of things with it. It's amazing. But they have suction cups underneath. They can suck up to things and even walk up on straight, smooth surfaces. That's something we cannot do. And so very powerful suction cups that are equivalent to body weight. So that will really lift that whole organism up on any surface. It's just unbelievably amazing, even on glass surfaces, which they're not used to as in terms of their environment, their natural environment. So, but they can do that too. So this is unbelievable, and nobody has the right to take an octopus out of the ocean. Anyway, so this is extremely interesting about all of this, how everything ties in, and how Heidegger ties into all of this. And Heidegger meant well, but he was scared, and he was also in denial, and he had the ability to do denial, and I don't have the ability to do denial. And again, maybe that has to do with this energy that is still in the beginning stages of evolving. I don't know. But he meant well, and now this sounds really crazy, probably, but I saw Heidegger again on the internet. He's here again, And as so many of these amazing, brilliant people from the past, they came back in dog form. But, you know, again, we have to be open to everything. Whatever there is, you know, open to infinite possibilities. But yeah, I saw Heidegger in that Sharpei, and that's why, and it's amazing. Every one of those that come back in dog form, that dog is always famous. It always turns out to be very famous. It's very interesting. Famous on the internet, you know. And the word gets around, and they have a very distinct character in their looks, in their facial expression, which dogs can have, absolutely, you know. And he was abused, and most of them have been. Mother Teresa has gone through the absolute worst thing there is, and that was the case of Puppy Doe. You might be able to find that again on the internet. I think the information is still out there. The Puppy Doe case, that was the absolute worst thing I've ever heard, and it still flashes up into my mind, and it just tortures me every time I think about it. And I, not long after that, maybe like a couple months later, I realized Puppy Doe. It's Mother Teresa. She came back. She felt like that was the lesson she still needed to learn. And it's amazing. And I almost like, I get mad at her. I felt like, Mother Teresa, how can you do something like this? How can you do that? How can you come back in dog form? A dog girl. It's the worst thing it's the absolute worst thing. This has bothered me so much. I felt like I wanted to commit suicide over that. I felt like this is too much. I can't handle it. But then again, Mother Teresa is a teacher too. And that sweet, sweet, innocent baby puppy dog. They had to finally euthanize that dog when they found the dog. I don't want to get into the details of it. I just, again, I wish the guy would be euthanized who did that to her. And we should do this. People like this, and not in form of penalty or revenge or retaliation. Not under that concept, but under the concept of safety for all. Those people, when they are like this, that is, how can we rehabilitate somebody like this? It probably would never happen, no matter how much he meditated. And but that still doesn't mean we shouldn't try the meditation. We should try it absolutely. This needs to be applied. If people want to save their lives, and if they want a better world to live in for everyone, then meditation needs to be applied. That's the only choice we have, actually. And it's just unbelievable. And I saw many others. I saw Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche come back. Also, a horrific case of a Dogo Argentino, a horrific abuse, and people saw it. They saw this incredible energy in this dog. They saw this character. I saw it too. I saw this amazing, that energy, and I felt like I've seen that before, that energy, and I was crying over that case, and that was last year, and I followed his story, and then I realized, oh my gosh, it's Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, because he felt like he missed out on this message. But it's because it was a sign of the times. They weren't ready yet. They were not ready yet for pansentience. So this is just in the very beginning, and that they're getting into pansentience and panpsychism. And with that, they're getting into the truth, into the absolute truth, and into infinity, into all of this. And all of these teachers that came back as dogs, that was their powerful message for humanity, because they wanted the most powerful message they can come up with. And they also wanted to learn. That was also their way of learning. Except for the Buddha. He did not need to learn. He just came back to teach only. To just be the example for all of us. And just the most amazing individual I have ever met. Unbelievable. I mean, he shares his food with everyone, no matter who that is, no matter how aggressive they are. He wants to keep playing with them after they bite him. And one Rottweiler slashed him up, and he still wanted to play with her. And so unfortunately, because of that, we can't let him together with other dogs anymore. But when he meets people, it doesn't matter who he meets. He loves everyone infinitely much, no matter how they look. They could be as dirty as heck, and the dirtiest homeless people, and I with my OCD, and it's like, oh my gosh, that guy wants to pet Kenny. He is so dirty, and he has alcohol and cigarettes and who knows what drugs on him and whatever. And yet I just cannot refuse anyone to pet Kenny, because Kenny is the Buddha, and he wants to give his love to every single individual, and wants to hug and lean against every single being there is, no matter how aggressive, no matter how dirty, how skinny, how fat, how ugly, how pretty, how smelly. It doesn't matter. He regards all of them as equals. He sees everyone as an equal. And that's the message of the Buddha.